Greetings, friends. This is Mike from Top 10 with Kyle and Mike. I'm joined here this week, surprise, surprise, by our old friend, Kyle. This week, just like every week, Kyle and I are going to be talking about a top 10 list. And this week, it's Kyle's topic, so I don't know what the hell we're going to talk about, but he's going to give us a topic, we're going to vigorously debate it, and by the end of the show, we're going to have a definitive top 10 list. So, K-Dog, what's the list this week?
Okay, Mike, this is one of those lists that came about because I thought of one thing and then thought, okay, how can I put that thing on a list? And then the rest of the list came from that.
Yeah. It's funny, you mentioned that was a method you were employing, and I've now decided that I might use that. I really like the idea.
Yeah, and you'll know as soon as I tell you the topic, you will know what item it was that spurred the list.
Okay.
So, the title of this episode will be Biggest Jerk Villains.
Okay. Oh, boy.
But what we're really doing here
I do know who spurred this, yes.
Yes. What we're really doing here is the biggest dick villains. And by that, I don't mean which villains have the biggest penises.
Yeah.
I mean which villains are just the biggest jerks.
Yeah, that would be a much shorter list to adjudicate because I guess it depends on how you interpret. Is Dr. Manhattan a villain? If yes, Dr. Manhattan wins because not only does he have a huge dong, he has an unlimited number of huge dongs. But I guess on a related note, before we dive into this other topic that I suppose we'll be talking about, does Big Dick Richard from Magic Mike ever have any heel turn, or is he kind of a solidly good dude throughout?
So this is one of the criteria on this list. The person in question must at some point exhibit some kind of evil. So, like, for example, Big Dick Rich is a good example of a guy who, even if he's not the greatest guy, doesn't do anything in the film that's really evil. Some other examples that would not be eligible for this list for the same reasons are Derek from Step Brothers, who is a colossal prick.
That's true.
But doesn't really do anything evil.
Interesting. He's borderline because we're meant to identify with Dale and Brennan, and I want to punch him in the face.
Exactly. We can talk about it. I just don't think.
Also of note, he probably has a huge penis because
Probably.
He does make $950K as the executive VP or the VP of the largest executive helicopter leasing company on the West Coast.
That is true. Speaking of guys with likely very large penises, the other guy in this category I had was Idris Elba's character in The Office, Charles.
God. That's a great example. Yes, he's a villain to Michael, but he's a really nice guy, and he's just trying to run the business properly.
Oh, I actually think that even though Michael really dislikes him, I think he's also just in general kind of a dick, like especially to Jim. He's really mean to Jim for no reason.
But if you're putting yourself in his shoes, it's understandable that he thinks Jim is worthy of his scorn. He wears the tuxedo the first time he meets him. He's always pranking Dwight. He really doesn't seem to be working very hard. Like, I can understand how if you didn't have this embedded love of Jim you're like, who is this guy?
That's true, but he also like flexes really hard in Office, like casual soccer, and
yes,
and also at the company picnic volleyball game. He's just kind of a dick.
This is true. I just want to interject because one of my favorite things that The Office does really well, as one of the first shows to really do this sort of the interview style, is I love when they do jokes where they don't give you the question, but they give you an answer that tells you the question is. And his is one of the best. He does the, yes, I am aware of the effect that I have on women. It's so perfect. My favorite, for those of you who love The Office, is the Kelly joke where she talks about feuds and she says, but seriously, if I'm really thinking about it, Elsie, Heidi's a bad friend and she has terrible skin. It's like one of the best quotes of that whole show. So we've kind of gone far afield. Charles, not totally evil, but not a lovely guy.
Right. And so the other end of that spectrum is that if you're really evil, but not really a dick per se. Mm-hmm. Two examples I have on here are Darth Vader, who isn't really a dick,
No.
And Voldemort. He's just evil. He's not really a
Yes, purely evil.
just the embodiment of evil itself.
Yeah.
And then I guess it's important to define then what is a dick. And my definition of a dick, you know one when you see one.
That is true. That is true.
There's a fine line. Like, you can be a jerk and you can be a dick. And all the guys, and I didn't intend to do this, but literally every single one of the characters on this list and all of my honorable mentions, every single one of them is male. So I guess, like, part of the definition is that you have to be a guy to be a real dick.
Interesting. I think you're generally right. I don't think you're 100%. It's 100%, but it's generally it's a solid rule.
I didn't go into this thinking that was thinking that at all. And then when I got done putting this list together, I was like, holy shit, these are literally every single one of them is a guy. So
yeah,
there's that. But anyways, we've done enough discussing what a dick is. Let's talk about the biggest dick villains.
Mm-hmm.
Number 10 is a bit obscure.
I know. If it's obscure, I've got some ideas.
Number 10 is John Fitzgerald from The Revenant.
Oh,
Tom Hardy's character. If you haven't seen The Revenant, just to fill you in on why he's such a dick and why he's a villain, he's put in charge of looking after Leonardo after he has been mauled by a bear.
Yes.
And so his job is basically to let the rest of his companions escape and run away from some Native Americans who are chasing them. And he just has to stay with Leo until he dies and keep him comfortable and then bury him and then catch up with the rest of the crew. Instead, he murders his son and leaves Leo for dead.
Yes, in plain sight of Leo, who is quite incapacitated at the time.
Right, and then he tells all the guys that he did what he was supposed to do and pockets a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So that is an evil thing to do. It also makes him a colossal prick. He's just a dick. Like, to say something like that and then, like, wait a day and then decide, like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. And the reason he's number 10 is because he's really, if you just said John Fitzgerald, I'm sure no one would know who we were talking about. And we have a particular attachment to this character because we think Tom Hardy is so amazing.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing about him is he sort of divides his negative attention pretty evenly between two groups. One is the Hugh Glass character, so Leonardo DiCaprio. He gets about half of his negative attention. The other half is Native Americans, just kind of writ large. And what's interesting is, in the case of his actions against Native Americans, he's not being a dick. He's being, like, misguided and evil. And he gives this incredibly terrifying little speech about Native Americans who he calls by a very different name, and has just this look in his eyes that you can't reckon with until you've seen it. And so I think that's a good way of thinking about it. You're right. His actions kind of, generally speaking, are more evil-ish, but the way he behaves towards Leo is he's just a dick.
He's just a dick. And that is, like, the biggest metric for me on this one, is if you think about that character, and you think, God, what a dick. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Cause his little speech about Native Americans, you can at least talk me into the trauma that led him to his actions.
Sure.
Misguided as they are. I'm like, oh geez, this is a tough tale. There's no good reason. There's no discussion to be had about what he did to Leo.
So
just being a dick.
That's number 10. He's a dick.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Number 9, you will have no idea who this is. Number 9.
Okay. All right. Shots fired.
I don't think you never watched Lost, right?
No.
So number 9 is a character from Lost. The character is Sawyer, not to be confused with, I believe his actual name is James, like the main character on the show that was on the plane that calls himself Sawyer. After the man who tricked his mom and dad, and there's a very long backstory, but there's this character named Sawyer who's just understood to be a con man, and in flashback you find out that after never knowing his son, he reaches out to him, and his son is another character on the show that was on the plane, John Locke, and he reaches out to him and says, "Hey, I'm your long lost dad. Like, do you want to come to my house and we can go hunt pheasants?" And John, like, desperately needs a father figure, and so they get along, and they hit it off really well, and it's very sweet, very nice, and accidentally, John walks into his dad's room while he's receiving dialysis, or as my grandfather calls it, dialysis.
I like that.
So he, like, sneakily allows John to find out that he needs a replacement kidney.
Oh, no.
He offers up the kidney. He takes the kidney. They go under together holding hands. He's so happy to be helping his newfound dad. He wakes up from the procedure. The bed next to him is completely empty, and his dad just completely stonewalls him. Now that he's got his kidney, he's out. And it causes John to go into a really serious spiral.
What a dick!
And it ruins a lot of John's future relationships as well. And later he's forced to reckon with it on the island. His dad, Sawyer, shows up again. It's actually a really cool plotline, but Sawyer, that's not his real name, that's his con man name.
Mm-hmm.
He is a colossal dick. Like,
wow.
He went through all the trouble of befriending and being a father figure to John, and then it's seemingly unnecessarily just tosses him aside like a piece of trash, which is evil. It's an evil thing to do, to toy with someone like that. Yeah. And it's just unnecessarily dickish. And so I wanted to throw him on here. He's low because it really only Losties will appreciate this one.
Well, I feel like you're getting at. I feel like what you're saying about how unnecessary it is. Clearly, the fact that the Locke character buys into this so wholly and is willing to give him the kidney tells you he probably could have just said, like, "Hey, son, here's the sitch. I know I haven't been much of a pops to you. I need a kidney. Help brother out." Like,
and John Locke is a good enough natured person that he probably would have done it. You're right. He was unnecessarily cruel to make him care for him so much. And then, again, dump him like a piece of one kidney trash. So, that's kind of a brutal storyline, and I think Sawyer's a big old dick. He also, the other guy I was telling you about, he, like, tricks this woman into getting her husband to invest in one of his business schemes while sleeping with her, and it causes the father to lose it a little bit, and the old murder-suicide later, just a kid with no parents, and he also ends up on the island, and so, like, they figure it out later that they've both been conned by the same guy. He's a real dick. Anyways, that's number 9. Number 8 is a character who I think straddles the line because he's kind of a dick. He's also just kind of a brat. Number 8 is Kylo Ren.
Interesting.
Mostly, not so much in The Last Jedi. A little bit in The Last Jedi towards the end. But especially in Force Awakens, he's just kind of rude to all the people that surround him, like poor General Hux. Yeah. And various minions that do his bidding and
don't even wear their name tags.
No, and the old guy at the beginning of Force Awakens, he just, like, very casually dismisses.
Yeah, that was the priest. That was Max von Sydow, right? That was the priest from The Exorcist / that's Brynden Rivers too, right?
The Three-Eyed Raven.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Very dismissive, kind of a dick. He raids that village and he gets he doesn't find, he's looking for the map to Luke. He doesn't get it. On his way out, seemingly for no reason, he orders his stormtroopers to kill an entire village of innocent people.
Didn't understand that move.
I think it's just because he's a dick.
Yeah.
And I guess he's covering his tracks. It seemed very unnecessary. He goes around with his lightsaber, he smashes things when he's in a bad mood, and the biggest thing is, if you've ever seen the SNL skit where he's on Undercover Boss.
Yeah.
He pretends to be Matt, the radar tech, and one of the guys is like, "Matt's a dick." So I heard Kylo Ren has an 8-pack. My friend saw him in the shower with his shirt off. So that's my argument for Kylo Ren. He's kind of a dick.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I'll be interested to see where the rest of this list goes, because he could end up kind of moving up or totally off the list. I have to get a better feel for the list.
Sure, exactly. That brings us to number 7. Number 7 is a villain that we both really love.
I was gonna say this. So there are two villains that you and I really love who have to be on this list. I have a strong sense of which one would be lower on the list, purely because literally nobody listening is going to know who it is.
Yes.
The other one people will know, but say like, oh boy, all right, that shouldn't have been number like 3 where you're probably going to rank him. So number 7, can I tell the audience who this has to be?
Yes.
Is this Mysterio?
It is Mysterio, also known as Mysterioso. So, for all of you who aren't avid Spider-Man fans, Mysterio, his backstory is
It's a good backstory.
He's a special effects artist. He works in Hollywood, and due to his combative nature, oftentimes butts heads with directors and actors, and ends up losing his job for being kind of a dick, and turns to a life of crime using his experience in special effects. So he wears this like green suit and this purple cape and what can
there's like a picture of a big collar.
Yeah, it's like a huge collar, and then imagine like a snow globe filled with smoke, like where his head should be. He calls himself Mysterio, and he robs banks using sleight of hand and special effects trickery, and hates Spider-Man for foiling him, obviously. And also, it's worth noting that his real name is Quentin Beck, which is a very dickish name. Yeah,
he's like that douchey guy from Long Island at like a clam bake who like won't stop telling you about his family. He's like Andy from The Office sometimes. He's like, when he goes fishing off a Montauk, he's like, I sniped a shark from the crow's nest. Like that's what a guy named Quentin Beck would tell you about it, like at a party.
Exactly. And it's worth noting that like his motivation is not, it is to get rich, but it's more, he does it like with a chip on his shoulder because he believes that rightfully so, people have cheated him out of what is rightfully like a successful career, and that people have conspired against him to quell his talent, and they're just jealous. And this is his way of proving his talent and skill and worth. And he's just a colossal dick. And in a lot of his arcs, really, it's not even about the money. It's at this point just proving that he's worthy and is smarter than Spider-Man. Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio, aka the reason we call him Mysterioso is because it was like some dumb thing online. It was just a typo. It was like a profile of whatever Spider-Man villains could come up in like the next movies or whatever, and someone mistakenly said Mysterioso.
Like made a very innocent mistake, and we've really latched onto it.
I just think it's way funnier.
Yes.
Yo soy Mysterioso. So,
but for all of you out there who don't have any idea who this is, do a little research.
Please Google.
You might find something you'll enjoy. Yes, at least Google image this.
Google image Mysterio, because it's worth just looking at him. You can tell by his costume, like, this guy's a prick.
Yes, absolutely.
So, that brings us through 7, which means that it's time for the not top 3.
Mm-hmm.
So then I picked 3 villains here that are, by all accounts, very pleasant individuals.
Okay.
Indisputably evil.
Yes.
But just in general, pretty pleasant. Not a dick.
Okay.
Number 3 is Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, that's a really good point. He kind of has a compulsion.
Yeah, he's sick.
Now, don't get me wrong. It's funny. My mom and dad and I actually had sort of a related conversation, which we needn't get too far into, but we were talking about criminality and how it's a really difficult thing to interpret, where I forget what somebody had done, but it was like one of us said, "Oh man, that's just sick." And that sent us down this spiral where you're like, "Oh man, well, is all crime just mental illness? Is all crime evil? What's the reality?" Obviously, it falls somewhere in between, but it's a really hard thing to say. And I feel like that plays into sort of this list and as a character, our interpretation of who's a dick, who's evil. It's kind of like, how necessary does this feel to this person's psychology?
Yeah,
And in the case of Hannibal Lecter, it feels utterly necessary.
yeah, it's like he has to do it despite his intellect and you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
he's really civil towards Jodie Foster's character.
Rather, he doesn't eat their liver with, like, you know, some crappy Coors Light. It's a nice Chianti.
Yeah, and some fava beans.
Yeah.
He does also remove a man's face and
That
put
is
it on his
also
own.
true. That is a fact.
So definitely evil, but really quite a civil villain.
Yeah.
Number 2 is probably my favorite villain of all time. Number 2 is Hans Gruber of Die Hard.
You do love Hans Gruber.
Hans Gruber very politely tells everyone in Nakatomi Plaza that this can go exactly how they want it to. It doesn't have to end in bloodbath. Really, they're not terrorists. They're just exceptional thieves. They're very polished. They're very slick, as Bruce Willis will tell you. He loses it a little bit towards the end when he starts to get very frustrated, but oftentimes our interaction with Hans is very pleasant discourse over a walkie-talkie, discussing the proceedings of the evening, and I just really like him. I think he's a very well put together villain, and
Yeah.
for the most part, quite civil.
Mm-hmm.
And number 1, you know him well, is Ra's al Ghul.
Ah, yes, detective.
Exactly. He refers to Batman as detective.
Yeah.
At least he believes his cause to be very noble. He lays out his plan in very easily followable logic. He extends Batman the honor of being a member of the League of Shadows.
Mm-hmm.
He wears nice clothing.
Yep.
He doesn't call people mean names. He's just a pretty civil guy.
Yes. He also, now I have to look up some timelines here, because I know that the sort of the Malthusian ethos that Thanos espouses is not unique to him. Obviously, it's Mr. Malthus's idea here, but I wonder, in the world of comic books, who originates this kind of notion, because our friend Ra's al Ghul has been espousing this far longer than I don't know what pronunciation I'm settling on, Thanos, than he has. So whatever courtesy we extend Thanos in sort of saying, well, you know, that idea of his a little bit, like, we have to extend that extra to our friend Ra's al Ghul, because he has the same idea but executes it in a much more sort of targeted and limited way. So he doesn't believe in this, like, massive 50-50 cull. Instead, he believes, like, okay, look, you see the branches have grown up a little bit too much over there. Okay, snip, snip. Like,
Let's use
he
economics as a weapon.
Exactly. He believes in a forest fire.
Right. Whereas Thanos arbitrarily decides half should do it, regardless.
Yeah, like, get rid of half of the trees. Ra's al Ghul says that little thicket over there is a little overgrown. Let's burn some of it. All right, that's fine. That's good.
Just so everyone's caught up, Ra's al Ghul is a Batman villain who appears in Batman Begins, and then again briefly in The Dark Knight Rises.
And if you're still confused, when he appears in Batman Begins and The Dark Knight Rises, he is referred to erroneously, utterly erroneously, as Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah.
So we don't accept that as canon on this pod.
No, certainly not. And I actually had as an honorable mention, not top 3, Thanos. They actually say it both ways in the movie.
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing for me.
Yeah.
Thanos is my inclination, but everybody seems to be sticking with the more, like, Midwestern Thanos.
I hear about 50-50. I particularly like Thanos, but he didn't think his plan all the way through, but in general he's pretty civil, and he, like, doesn't pick which 50-50 are going to die. He's pretty fair.
That would have marked him out as a dick.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
So,
interesting. I got one that just keeps sneaking to the front of my mind here. He represents a type, and this is kind of an example of movie cheating. One of those would be the whatchamacallit, Ben Affleck's character, whose name I'm forgetting here, in the town, where the type is guy who does really bad things should likely be considered a villain, but whose evil deeds are not considered all that heavily by the film in which he is. Doug, right? His name's Doug. Doug McCrae. Dougie McCrae. Yeah, he's Dougie McCrae. So, like, this is a pretty common type.
Yeah.
He is absolutely not a dick at all because the movie doesn't force us to confront, like, his ill deeds at all.
Right.
But, man, he's a villain. He's shooting at a lot of people.
Well, he's definitely at least a little bit evil.
Yeah, and yet I like him because the movie doesn't make me do anything but not, you know.
Yeah, the likable villain is a good type because they are probably a dick, but you're right. Like, if the movie wants us to like them, we're not really going to explore that too far.
Exactly.
I like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any other not top three?
No, that was the one that just kind of really stuck in my head as we're talking about this.
Okay.
Nathan Drake. There's a long, man. Whew.
Nate Drake.
Nate Drake,
He's a
mass
colossal
murderer.
dick.
Yeah, he
and
is
also kind of evil.
Yeah, no, he's absolutely evil.
I guess he doesn't fit the list. So I guess another criteria then is that you need to be a villain because he's clearly the protagonist and not the antagonist.
Correct.
I don't want to put him on the list.
No, he has to appear on some list, but we'll work on that.
Okay, so that was 10 through 7 and then not top 3. I think we should continue from last time and do our recap only once in the middle, so I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
Number 6 is General or Colonel? Captain? I don't remember his specific rank. It's Hans Landa of Inglourious Bastards.
Oh, whew. Okay.
Insanely evil. Like, probably the most evil person on this list. But also a dick because he toys with his victims in really sinister and dickish ways. Yeah. In the opening scene of that movie, he has a very long conversation only to scare the people that he knows are hiding below the floorboards just beneath him. Mm-hmm. And then as a total dick move, he says in a language they understand that he is going to go on his merry way and tricks them into believing they're going to be fine before having them murdered. Also, later in the movie, he very obviously toys with someone that he knows is terrified of him. I can't remember her name, but in the restaurant.
Shoshana?
Yeah. Very clearly toys with her with the cream. Wait for the cream. And even later in the film, he knows very obviously that there are some imposters in his midst at the premiere of the Hero of a Nation or whatever that movie is.
Yeah, whatever they called it.
And he starts speaking Italian, knowing full well that none of them speak Italian. He's, again...
It makes for a kind of a funny scene.
Very funny. Very funny. Indisputably evil character.
Yeah.
And I think indisputably a colossal dick.
He's a really interesting example because he proves how fully these two qualities can coexist. Because, as you said, he's unquestionably the most evil character on this. But he's also just a prick. And he could have been one without the other.
Right.
But is both. And so much of... Yeah.
Because you've seen this character without the dick qualities.
Yes.
In a lot of movies.
Mm-hmm.
and there are a lot of cases of a guy that's a dick and toys with his food like he does that isn't nearly as evil as he is too.
Well, and the thing is, even within that movie, there are plenty of characters who are far more evil up the high command, who are far more evil, but they're not dicks. They're just these they're portrayed in the movie, especially as just slobbering idiots who just want more and more and more and are evil. But that's not him. He has this weird other set of things he's trying to get, which is just messed up.
He's a dick.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think he's a really interesting case because he begs the question of kind of what terms we're using, and I think he's well placed.
Excellent. So with that, I'll recap quickly our 10 through 6.
Mm-hmm.
Number 10 was John Fitzgerald of The Revenant.
Mm-hmm.
Number 9, Sawyer from Lost. Number 8, Kylo Ren. Number 7, Mysterioso. Number 6, I think it's Colonel Hans Landa. of Inglourious
Yeah, I mean,
Basterds.
I think he's Obersturmführer or something. He's a German rank.
Yeah, for sure. All right, number 5. Another Batman villain. Still not the one that you're thinking of.
Oh, man, okay.
Yeah. Number 5 is Bane from The Dark Knight Rises.
I was gonna say, which Bane are we talking about
It
here?
has to be... Well, it should be from Dark Knight Rises. Because only in Dark Knight Rises... In the comics, this happens too, but Bane, rather than killing Batman, after he proves his superiority in extremely convincing fashion...
Which is a major goal of his.
Yes. He breaks his body, snaps his back over his knee, and he could have just left it there. But instead, he insists on breaking his spirit as well, and he forces him into this hole in the middle of the desert and makes him watch as he destroys Gotham. Really, really unnecessary.
To no obvious benefit of his own.
In fact, it ultimately leads to his demise.
Ultimately, yes.
As villains are wont to do.
Yeah.
The fact that he had already very convincingly proven his superiority to Batman, it was really, really extra to put him in that hole and make him watch. I think.
Yeah, totally.
So, and right before we got on this pod, we were talking about watching Dark Knight Rises on TV and Bane. And it's because the rest of the movie, I think I actually would argue that he's closer to the not top 3 because he very civilly kind of robs the stock exchange and kind of politely argues his points in a lot of cases. But in this particular case, he's being a big old dick.
Well, that actually begs another question that I've been curious about here is it's tough because some of these characters that I would be kind of inclined to think about get too much of a redemptive turn where not only do they turn to good, but you then get a like really solid explanation of why they were doing bad. He's an interesting case. As far as this goes, so much of his work in this movie is determined by his love for Talia al Ghul, that it's hard to attribute that much of it to being a dick. But yes, this one act is just an act of supreme dickishness.
Yeah, it's very egocentric and kind of separate from the rest of his motivations.
Yeah, kind of odd, actually, the more you think about it. It doesn't really fit with the way he's characterized in the movie. Just kind of as going down a side road here. I like him being characterized as the guy who would just kill Batman and deposit him in a gutter somewhere.
Right.
More than him as the guy who would break his back and then just leave him to screw with him.
Because if he really believes he's that much more superior to Batman, it makes sense that he would just kind of casually discard him. But he's paying Batman kind of an undue amount of respect by forcing him to be humiliated in such a fashion.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But anyways,
there's a lot to it.
Mm-hmm. Number 4. These guys are silly, but their villainy is not. They're probably the least evil people on this list, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they go about their business is so dickish that I had to put them high. Number 4 are Marv and Harry, aka the Wet Bandits from Home Alone. Because if you remember correctly, these guys go around robbing people's homes while they're on vacation, which is fine. That's what burglars do.
It's a smart time.
Yep. They go and they take stuff and they leave. Or that's what they should do, anyways. Marv has this weird habit of clogging up these poor people's sinks and turning the water on before leaving and flooding their homes. What could he possibly get out of that besides just being a total dick? And really it's just Marv, because Harry says to him, like, what are you doing, Marv? Why are you doing that? He goes, we're the Wet Bandits. Like, literally his only motivation is just because he wants to exemplify this stupid nickname, the Wet Bandit. Like, you've done these people enough harm by breaking into their homes and shattering their sense of security and stealing a bunch of their stuff. what good does it do you to flood their homes as you leave? It's just a really big dick move.
So I want to get back to Home Alone in a second, but in a much darker way, this reminds me of a character from True Detective. If you recall, there's somebody who has a similar problem.
I don't remember.
Remember he breaks into homes and
oh yeah, okay, yeah,
yes, sort of a similar compulsion, somewhat similar compulsion. At any rate, yes, I agree. I'm with you because that I think is what we basically have to make a snap judgment on all of these people when a person behaves in a way not just that isn't consistent with what we would do, but that isn't consistent with something we understand. Like, I don't understand the compulsion to just mess with somebody's house just to mess with somebody's house. And so you're kind of forced as a viewer and as a human to sort them. Like, is this person kind of a crazy dick or are they insane and evil? Like, which way am I kind of sorting this person a little bit?
I think it's important to note that if this was a real thing, if there was a cat burglar who flooded people's homes on his way out of them, I would say this person is maybe not a dick. This person is sick in some kind of way.
Compulsive in some way, yeah.
But given the way that they're portrayed in this movie as kind of aloof, kind of idiotic stooges, I think it's fair to say that he's just a dick.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Like, if Marv was real, he probably doesn't make this list, but because of the way he's portrayed in the movie, I think it's fair to say that he's just a big dick. And I'm glad it comes back to get him. Because now, thanks to his little stunt, they know each and every house that he's hit.
Yeah, I'm with you.
As the cop tells him at the end. And then they end up bailing on that particular stratagem in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, when they become the Sticky Bandits. It's one of my favorite jokes from that movie. He's got
that.
He's got the sticky glove, and he like goes by the guy with like the Santa Clauses that collect change, and he sticks his hand in his bucket, and then like when he pulls it out, it's covered in coins. We're the Sticky Bandits now.
It's interesting. I think they might have called the guy from True Detective that too.
Ugh, different kind of sticky. Number three, my lord.
3, my lord.
Number 3.
Lord Farquaad?
No, he's an honorable mention, though. Number 3 is Mr. Lucius Malfoy of the Harry Potter series.
Yeah, I was very much hoping a Malfoy would make this and was interested to know which one you would choose.
So the reason I didn't go with Draco is because due to his age, Draco is just kind of a brat and a bully to me. And he's also not quite evil enough because, especially towards the end, he really grapples with it. Like, as soon as he starts to be asked to start doing some really evil things.
That's a good point. That's sort of the issue that I was getting at is early on we can purely hate him. Later on we kind of see we get too much of him to think of him as like evil.
He becomes a little too sympathetic. Yeah. And Lucius Malfoy, however, he's just a dick. Like, there's really no reason that he has to be so god-awful to the Weasleys.
No.
Oh, secondhand book must be a
Well, you remember one of his biggest dick lines is when they're at the Quidditch World Cup and he says, "If it rains, you'll be the first to know." And it's like, ugh. What an elitist asshole thing to say.
Horribly dickish. I say that every single time we go to any event because usually we're in the cheapos up near the top. And I always say that even if it's a Blackhawks game and it's very much indoors.
Yeah, generally.
Allegius does not think it's funny.
Oh, I do.
That has never prevented me from saying it.
No, I'm not surprised to hear that.
He's just mean. He's mean to Dobby, which is a cardinal sin. Can't be doing that.
Don't do that. SPEW will come and get you.
That's right. Speaking of spew, he's really, really mean to Hermione, which you can't be mean to Hermione.
No.
Regardless of the consistency of her blood. So, anyone that's read Harry Potter, I don't think we have to say much more. Lucius Malfoy is just the worst. And, like, towards the end, he is redeemed somewhat, I guess, when he starts to like kind of think twice about how evil he's being.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't feel a whole lot of
Well,
sympathy
it's
for him.
definitely a J.K. Rowling gesture towards. I mean, it's very obvious. This is all a large sort of Nazi metaphor,
Yeah.
and I think it's her gesture at trying to understand the gradations of evil, and I think it's really important. He's an important character for her because it's really simple, and I think I've heard people do it, to read her books and group people into good and evil, Death Eater
Yeah.
and not. But that is specifically said. The world doesn't split into Death Eaters and everybody else.
That's true.
And she doesn't do that very intentionally. And Lucius Malfoy is a really interesting case because he's testing us as readers to make sure we understand how blurry that line is between good and evil. And obviously, in a historical sense, that's a very important lesson to learn. And he's interesting because she's testing you on both ends. She's testing you to say a person who is evil can be worthy of sympathy, and a person who is worthy of sympathy can still be an irredeemable asshole who you hate, and you kind of have to learn to live with that tension.
Yeah. It's a very important lesson to learn. People aren't cast in one side or the other, and
Yeah.
yeah. But I think beautifully put. I think he's still a dick.
But yeah, it's crucial that he still be a dick because we have to learn.
Right.
We have to judge him kind of holistically. That's tough.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Number two.
Number 2.
Not many people are going to know who this guy is because this is kind of a cult movie that he's from. Number 2 is Castor Troy from Face Off.
Oh my god. I forgot. I was not even thinking of him.
Yeah, Castor Troy, for everyone who hasn't seen Face Off, the basic premise of this movie is that John Travolta is an FBI agent who for a very long time has been chasing this terrorist named Castor Troy, portrayed by Nick Cage, finally catches him, and then in an attempt to extract some information from his brother, they remove Castor Troy's face and put it on John Travolta's face.
Yeah.
So that he looks like him.
Seamlessly.
Seamlessly. And then through some shenanigans, Castor Troy ends up getting John Travolta's character's face on his, so they essentially switch faces. And voices and bodies. It's all, it doesn't make any sense.
It's explained. They have reasons.
Only barely.
Yes.
What makes Castor Troy such a dick of a villain, first of all, he's kind of a dick even before they switch faces.
Yeah.
But he then impersonates John Travolta, and I'll just say that he and John Travolta's wife live as man and wife.
Yeah, it's a very strange element of the story that does not age well. So so this is a conversation that we had before our friends at the Ringer had this conversation. I think that they voted. They have a topic that they do sometimes on this podcast where they talk about what aged the worst. And I think it was pretty unanimous that this portion of the movie aged the worst. A conversation that we had separately several weeks before that.
Yeah.
Did not age well.
But
that aside,
yeah,
that falls much more into they were probably trying to make him look like a dick in the 90s. Now he just looks evil.
Right.
So our interpretation of that is different. It's important that we live sort of in the era of the film, and the film is trying to use that as a means of showing he's a dick.
Right, exactly.
Which is very effectively conveyed throughout the rest of the movie. And he does
other things that now still are just dickish. Like the way he interacts with his daughter is very dickish. And
well, the gun. Remember, he has so there's this exceptionally drawn out scene at the beginning of the movie where he shoots some lady for no reason. Really, there's a chase. He's in a private plane, and there's people shooting stuff. And
and he licks that lady on the face for no reason.
I forgot about that. Yes, he licks that lady, which was really weird. But then his friend presents him like it's like King Arthur getting Excalibur, but really it's just him getting this weird box that has, if I let me try to remember and you tell me. It has like a gold-plated Desert Eagle. I think a bong or a joint.
A bunch of weed.
There's some pills.
And
something
candy.
There's something sex related.
It's just a weird assortment of things.
And then yes, there's like some rock candy.
The way he acts, he's very pompous and very out there, kind of like Nick Cage did a lot in this time in his career, which means he kind of straddles the line. He edges very close to just being an ass.
Yeah.
But I think it's fair to say that he's a dick.
Oh, totally. There's no question about that. His name is Castor Troy.
So
he kind of runs into some of the issues of the Quentin Becks of the world.
Yes. And he is a terrorist, so he's certainly evil.
Yes, no question about it.
So that's Castor Troy. If you haven't seen Face Off, I'm not going to universally recommend it. I would recommend it if you're looking for a very overdone, silly, fun action movie with the understanding that some aspects of it haven't aged particularly well.
If you've got a bunch of popcorn and a bunch of beer or a bunch of soda, whatever is your beverage of choice.
Say, for example, you had gathered some of your closest friends for a weekend specifically dedicated to watching movies. This might be a good one to pop in.
It would be a great pick, sort of a palate cleanser.
Absolutely. After you had watched something a little more serious, like Brick, perhaps.
Oh, God. It was so dark. And not as good as any of us expected.
No. Anyways.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know who number one is by now.
I've got a strong feeling I know who number one is, but why don't you surprise me?
Number one, he's among the least evil people on this list. Still evil.
He's barely evil at times.
Yeah. But I think the biggest dick on the list, number one, another Batman villain, is the Riddler, a.k.a. Edward Nygma, a.k.a. E-Nygma.
Yeah. E-Nygma, get it?
Yep. First of all, calling yourself Edward Nygma is a really, really good head start.
Yes, absolutely.
His motivations, though, really cement the deal because literally the only reason that he's putting people in harm's way and jeopardizing the safety of innocent people is just literally to prove that he is superior intellectually to Batman. That is his only motivation, and he undoes himself every time compulsively by leaving clues that Batman can solve and find him. Like, he could get away with all sorts of things, and he chooses not to because he wants Batman to know that he could have stopped him if he was just smart enough to figure out the clues, which he always does. The Riddler is, in my opinion, the biggest dick, even though he's not the most evil or even close to the most evil on this list, because those motivations are so ridiculous.
No, and what's interesting is I think, so different characters who have been interpreted many different ways in different media, they often get different defining qualities depending on, the medium that they're being translated to. The Riddler has appeared in several movies. He's appeared in animated television shows, video games, and very importantly, that's been a big addition to his work recently. Comic books. Every single interpretation agrees pretty much exactly on who and what he is because his essence is so pure.
There aren't, tons of interpretations of the Riddler.
No.
Like, there are various versions of Bane or the Green Goblin or General Zod.
Even the Joker, there's some relative flexibility around kind of what he's all about.
There's only so much you can do with the Riddler because his motivations are so base and so dickish.
Yeah, that his motivation is in a dickish way to show he's smarter than Batman.
That's it.
That's kind of it.
That's it. And in doing so, he oftentimes puts people into harm's way that really don't deserve to be. And that's where the evil comes in.
Absolutely. I really loved the work that they did on the Arkham games with the Riddler. I don't know whose voice that is, but that voice of the Riddler was outstanding. So for the listeners, there's a significant sort of sub portion of this game is solving riddles that the Riddler has set to you, and each of the riddles is read in the Riddler's voice, which is very enjoyable. It's a really fun part of the game.
It's really fun.
Yeah, and the riddles are all just dickish. They're like these kind of dumb puns.
They're barbs, you know, like
yeah, and they're just being a dick. No, there's really nothing else to it.
he's a dick almost just for being a dick's sake.
Yeah.
So that's my number one. I'm gonna roll into my honorable mentions if that's all right with you.
Please do, sir.
Okay, I've got a long list here. I'm gonna rattle through them pretty quickly here. Mars from The Martian, because Mark Watney actually says in his journal, Mars, you're a dick. I think after it blows up his potato farm.
Yeah, I like that.
Just a nod there. I know you don't like this movie as much as I do. Captain America Civil War. Literally the villain in that movie, his only motivation is just to make Iron Man and Captain America fight each other. That's it. That's
Who's the villain in that one?
His name is Byron Zemo.
Oh. Wait, is that the same one from Winter Soldier?
No, he's not in Winter Soldier.
Okay.
Not Robert Redford's character.
No, who's the miniature, the guy who's really, really small? He was in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Oh, I didn't.
It doesn't matter. You keep going. It doesn't matter.
He's the worst. And also from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Loki. He's just mischievous. Not so much a dick, but you know, the Prince of Mischief or God of Mischief. Montgomery C. Burns.
Oh wow, I like that pick. I like Mr. Burns as a pick.
This one is pretty much just for me and you. It's Mondego from
Count of Monte Cristo.
The Count of Monte Cristo. He not only fucks over his best friend and gets him thrown into jail for the rest of his life, but then goes and marries his girlfriend. That's
a really good pick. That might need to contend.
Yeah, that's just because literally no one knows who Mondego is. And
anymore. Every boy from, I don't know, the mid 1800s till 1950 read that book.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite books ever.
Same.
Also, basically, loosely adapted in The Revenant. It's the same kind of theme, you know, you shouldn't play God. And so anyways, Mondego.
I may listen to that. I've been looking for classics to listen to again. I might listen
that'd
to
be a really good one.
Yeah.
David from Alien, or Prometheus and then Alien Covenant. He's a dick.
Yeah,
he's just mean.
Yeah. I still don't know why he does all that shit.
He's just a dick.
Yeah.
There's some other stuff besides that, but he's a dick. This guy is not really so evil. Dennis Feinstein from Parks and Rec.
There's a well to be dipped into there.
Yep. Hal from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Despite being a computer
he's a dick.
Yeah, he's really mean.
Man, oh man, he's a dick.
Jean Girard from Ricky Bobby, just because he forces him to say that he likes crepes, or tries to.
That's a good pick. You taste of America.
Yes, exactly. Edward Rooney from Ferris Bueller.
Yep.
Translation: your ass is mine.
Les jeux sont faits.
He's insufferable, but also not evil at all, really. He's just an administrator.
That's true.
One of my favorites, Swiper from Dora the Explorer.
That is a good pick. Why does he do what he does?
He just wants to steal stuff and be a dick. That's it. That's his only motivation. And then I had the Armitages from Get Out, because they seem like they're really overdoing it.
Yeah, that's a good point. So that is a really fundamental point of all of this, is there are people, as we discussed, who do evil things, which obviously what the Armitages are doing is evil, but they then execute in a dickish way. Like, what they're doing is this deeply evil thing. They don't need to play with their food, like you said earlier.
I think there's like a brief... Do you remember when he's in the chair and he's like talking to the guy that that's getting his eyes or whatever? And he says, from what I understand, the process works better if the subject has an understanding of what's happening. that maybe explains why he's talking to him on the screen. It really doesn't explain
No, it doesn't explain the rest of it, though.
why she had to date him for like several months before, like as weird as it is to say, like the brother in the beginning of the movie when he just like whacks that dude on the dome and throws him in his trunk. That's obviously still super evil, but it's actually less dickish.
Totally. It absolutely is.
So,
yeah, I think that's a big, I mean, I do think just as a general matter, that's a big theme in that movie is sort of being true to who you are. And that's probably not the greatest sin of the Armitages. That's just what they do is their greatest sin, but pretending to be something other than what they are is their other greatest sin, and part of the reason that the brother doesn't go down as nearly as much of a dick as the Allison Williams character or the dad especially
the dad.
Yeah.
That was the end of my honorable mentions, but I just thought of a character
Yeah, hit me.
that I think actually needs to be on this list and high. I can't believe I didn't include him initially. It's Syndrome, your arch nemesis.
Yeah. He was on the list of people I was thinking about.
He simply must be on the list.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we can come back to that. Who else did you have on yours?
So I've got a couple that I think should really be on the list. I'm just going to run you through my people I've written down as we're talking, and then the ones that I want to really stump for. Mm-hmm. So one is Leslie Chow, from The Hangover, the Ken Jeong character. He's just kind of a dick. There's really no reason for anything he does. He's just a dick. But a great character.
Yes.
Dr. Bob Kelso from Scrubs. So I think Kelso we should really consider. Now, like all of the characters on Scrubs, he has his sort of redemptive arc where you learn more about his life and yada yada yada.
His gay son.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's a great storyline. Still a complete dick that whole show, and likely worthy of consideration. I think Ryan Howard from The Office is such a dick.
But do you think he is a dick? Or do you think he is more closely described as a tool?
Ugh. He's so many things at once.
He's the worst.
He really is the worst. Which I respect the hell out of BJ Novak for writing himself that way, because as the head writer, he could have done anything.
I think he understands that his face is so exquisitely punchable.
Yes.
And so therefore could not write himself any other way.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
One that I definitely has to be on this list is Steve Frizzelli from The Italian Job. He is,
oh my god,
such an exquisite asshole. Oh my god, he is the worst. So for those of you who haven't seen The Italian Job, basically the premise is there's this, as usual, band of thieves. There's the old guy who's on the one last job. Of course, he gets killed. He gets killed right before retirement. He gets killed by this guy, Steve, who's played very, very capably by Edward Norton. So he kills him, but just before this, when all these guys are in the Alps talking about their big score and what they're going to do with it, they all say one thing. Like, one of them is going to get a villa in I think somewhere in the Spanish countryside, and he's going to have a room just for his shoes. One of them is going to have this Aston Martin Vanquish. One of them is going to have a speaker system so loud it'll blow a woman's clothes off. Like, they all have very specific, they all have a specific thing that they want. And they ask Steve, what do you want? He goes, I'll take one of each. And it's just, it's such a douchey answer. He has no ambition of his own. He has nothing in his heart, no ambition, nobody he cares about, nothing. He just kind of wants to win. And so he kills this guy. He tries to kill all his friends, steals all their stuff, and then just acts like a douche.
I think this gets bonus points because I can so totally believe that Ed Norton himself is actually a dick.
Yeah.
He's got incredibly dickish features. And
agreed.
His voice is just, like, he just sounds like a dick.
Except in Moonrise Kingdom when he's keeping that log. One of the best scenes, like, in movie history. He's
also
so
in Isle of Dogs. Like, he's so great as a voice actor in that movie. And
he's great.
I'm sure Ed Norton's a fantastic guy to hang out with. But
I listened to a pod with him once. He was really likable.
Yeah.
But weird. Definitely weird.
He would have to be.
Yeah.
But in this case, played to perfection. Steve Frizzelli, big dick,
Yeah.
for sure.
So Steve Frizzelli, I think, needs to be on this list. I think this one, I think the fucking nihilists, man. I think the nihilists from The Big Lebowski ought to be on this list because by definition, they believe in nothing, right?
Must be exhausting.
So their whole thing is they believe in nothing, and yet they still they throw a freaking
Nice marmot, man.
nice marmot, man. They throw a rodent in the bath while the dude is just smoking a J and just chilling out. Like, they are just dicks. They piss on his rug. Like, there's no benefit to what they're doing.
Well, to be fair, the nihilists don't piss on his rug.
Who pisses on his rug?
Jackie Treehorn's guys piss on his rug.
Oh, okay, true. But they throw the marmot in the tub.
And they smash his table for no reason with that cricket paddle.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about the cricket paddle. Yeah, so it's just like, it's totally unnecessary because, so they think he's the Big Lebowski at first, so sure, okay, the breaking and entering is excusable. But like, it's quickly obvious that he is not the Big Lebowski, and so there's no need to throw a marmot in his bathtub.
Well, I think you're still confusing it a little bit because they know that he's the dude. They just think that he has the money that the Big Lebowski actually gave him.
They do? Don't they call him...
It's Jackie Treehorn's guys at the beginning that are like, where's the money, Lebowski? And then he has to explain to them, like, do I look like I'm married, man? The toilet seat is up.
Okay, alright, I'm weakening my own argument with my poor memory.
The nihilists are trying to intimidate him with the marmot and smashing his table. I completely agree with you. I think that they're dicks. We'll have to debate about it because I don't think they're quite maybe evil enough. They're just I think they skew more towards just being dicks, but I don't think there's any question that they are dicks.
Yeah, that's a good point. Another one who I think deserves serious consideration is Colonel Jessup from A Few Good Men.
Ooh.
So Colonel Jessup is a grade A dick. So he's evil. So he's evil. Even in the film is trying to balance like some different possibilities of like, is what he did good? Is what he did bad? Even with that consideration, the movie makes it pretty clear that what he did is bad. So basically, he is the commanding officer on Guantanamo Bay military base in Cuba, and under his watch, one young Marine is killed by two Marines who are ordered to give him a code red, which is now a very famous phrase. No, not a Mountain Dew. It's now a famous phrase, but at the time, it was intended to be... They're sort of supposed to mess with this guy and get him in line so he shapes up as a Marine. He ends up dying, turns into a whole conspiracy. It's the very famous "you can't handle this truth" scene. So he's evil for the reasons that we've discussed. The movie does a nice job of debating whether that makes him evil. He's a dick because of the insanely demeaning way he speaks to Lieutenant Kaffee this whole time. Also, and this is another thing that came up on Our Friends at the Ringer that I had noticed before and always found very out of place. He has this weirdly anti-Semitic moment.
Yeah.
Where he says, "You, Lieutenant Weinberg." He's like asking who's gonna stand on the wall to defend like basically the realms of men, and he's like, "You, Lieutenant Kaffee," and it's like kind of silly then, and then like somehow he jumps up the ridiculousness 10 notches when he gets to Lieutenant Weinberg, which just you can only chalk up to anti-Semitism, which is just weird. He's a dick. He's a total dick, and he's just always mean to Daniel Kaffee for no reason. The best part of this movie, to me, is that Tom Cruise, and I mean Tom Cruise in this situation, not Lieutenant Kaffee, is able to out-dick the dick. So the way he gets the colonel to admit that he ordered the code red, "What are you goddamn right I did?" is by being so much of a dick that the original OG dick can't help but rise to the bait, and it's just beautiful.
It's a brilliant strategy.
Yeah. All right, I get two more that I also, one of which I think warrants consideration, one of which is just kind of fun. Councilman Jeremy Jam, you just got jammed. So he's kind of fits with our friend, the perfumier. There are several people on Parks and Rec who are kind of just dicks. Jeremy Jam is chief among them. But last, one that I also think should be given some serious consideration, Chief Inspector Dreyfus. So Chief Inspector Dreyfus is a dick throughout all of the Pink Panther films, but the Kevin Kline iteration is so mean. The whole setup is that he brings in Inspector Clouseau to fail at solving the murder of Yves Glouon so that he can then swoop in and take all the glory and win whatever the Order of France or whatever it's called.
Yeah, he's been nominated 6 times.
Yeah.
He has never won.
No, so he's just a total dick.
He is a dick. I think I have the same problem with him that I have with the
Not
Nihilists.
evil enough.
Not evil enough. But man, I hate him because
he does. If it helps his case in the old movies, he does eventually turn into like this crazy supervillain.
That's true, and he's also a bit of a racist. Just by assuming that the Chinese did it.
Oh yeah,
the poison is Chinese.
The Chinese
are Chinese. It may be too early to tell, but I think our killer is Chinese.
The Chinese are Chinese is a good line, though.
The Chinese are Chinese.
It's very succinctly put.
I think someday, just for our own pleasure, we should do a top 10 movies that we irrationally love, despite them having no real merits whatsoever.
Yeah, that would be a fun one. Along Came Polly would have to figure high on that list for my family, though for our joint list, Pink Panther probably stands on its own.
Yeah, undoubtedly. So we're at an hour 10, so let's try to zip through this.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do some serious construction, because right off the top, I agree with you that Steve Frizzelli needs to be on it. I think Syndrome needs to be on it.
Yep, and I think Colonel Jessup.
I think Colonel Jessup, too. If just to get Jack Nicholson on there once.
Yeah, because he's very good at playing that sort of character.
If I had to pick 3 on my list that were a little vulnerable, I would pick my bottom 3, which...
I think they're right. Yeah, I think that they're your bottom 3 for good reasons. You kind of had reservations about each for different reasons, and I think that they're all fair.
In retrospect, I think John Fitzgerald's motivations are very selfish, and he's definitely evil. I don't know how big of a dick he is. Sawyer, I think, is one of the biggest dicks on this list. Like, his actions are just so unnecessary. But I acknowledge that it's only relevant to Lost fans. And I think that Kylo Ren leans more towards the brat, kind of pouty side of things. And also, he's gone on a bit of a hero arc, too. And I think what ultimately are going to maybe look back on him as less of a dick. Yeah, he's got a lot of growing to do in episode 9. So if you're cool with those 3, I am too.
I am. I think that's a good way to set it up. And I think of our 3, I think Steve Frizzelli, Syndrome, and then Jessup is probably the order they land on the list.
Probably.
So we kind of have to figure out how high we want to go with them.
Steve Frizzelli is such a dick. But
yeah,
Syndrome is like, I think, more evil than people give him credit for.
Yes, he is quite evil.
Like, he steals their kid at the end. Like, with the intention of just, like, saying, fuck you, because you ignored me as a ward when I was a kid. I am going to turn your son.
I'm your ward!
I am your ward! Incrediboy! Plus my love for that character, I would like to see him actually go higher than Steve Frizzelli, but I'm not going to fight too hard.
Well, he has more cachet, to be fair.
Certainly. Because if you tell me Steve Frizzelli, I probably need to be told that it's the guy from the Italian Job, though he is a huge dick. But everyone knows Syndrome, your arch nemesis.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
We can talk about it. How do you feel about the Riddler at number 1? He's the reason I put this list together. Obviously, he doesn't represent the true number 1 for the peoples, but we've loved the Riddler for such a long time.
Yeah, we've been circling the Riddler for a while.
Yes.
And I do think he's the platonic ideal of the dickish villain. While he may not check all the boxes, he is the purest form of what this is.
Let's keep the Riddler at number 1.
Yeah.
What do you think after that?
I kind of feel good. I think Bane should move down.
Yeah.
I think Bane should fall on the list. But other than that, I'm kind of comfortable. I like where things are set up.
Okay. So where would you slot our new guys then?
I'd probably go 4-5 for Syndrome and Frizzelli.
And slide the Wet Bandits and Bane down a ways.
Yeah.
I like that.
So I think if we go Enigma 1, Castor Troy 2, Lucius Malfoy 3, Syndrome, let's go Syndrome 4. Syndrome 4, Steve Frizzelli 5. I think we then go Hans Landa, Mysterio, Jessup.
And that puts the Wet Bandits at 10.
Yeah.
They are pretty silly. I'm super comfortable with Syndrome at 4.
Yeah, me too.
I would just like to reference that chilling line in that movie when he says,
yeah.
And when I'm old and I've had my fun, I'll sell my inventions. And when everyone's super, no one will be.
That quote will appear many more times as long as we are making this pod, because it is one of the greatest lines in the history of film.
Yeah, for sure. And his motivations are pretty similar to Riddler in that a lot of he's very wrapped up in just proving to Mr. Incredible that he was worthy of his attention all this time. He tricks him into coming to that island and makes him fight those robots just to prove that he's better than him.
He almost ruins his marriage because of that.
Yeah. Anyways, that's enough gushing over Syndrome. I think I agree with how we have it. So wait, you said, so then we had Syndrome, Steve Frizzelli, Hans Landa,
yep,
Mysterio.
Jessup.
Oh, Jessup.
I
over
went
Mysterio?
Jessup, Mysterio, but they can kind of go either way.
Let's go Mysterio, then Jessup.
Okay.
And then we would have Bane and then
the Wet Bandits.
The Wet Bandits. That's a list from 10 to 1 or 1 to 10, depending on your fancy, of the biggest dick villains that we could think of.
Yeah, I think it feels like we got a list.
I absolutely concur. Do you want me to recap, or do you want to do it?
Why don't you let it rip, big dog?
Okay. Number 10, the biggest dick villains out there. The Wet Bandits from Home Alone. Number 9, Bane of the Dark Knight Rises. Number 8, thank you. Number 8, Colonel Jessup up on that wall. Number 7, Mysterioso, a.k.a. Mysterio, a.k.a. Quentin Beck. I really hope he's in one. Yeah, I really hope he's in one of these upcoming Spider-Man.
Oh, I'm rooting for it so hard.
Even if he's just like the training wheels villain, like towards the beginning of the movie.
Like the Rhino, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Number 6, Colonel Hans Landa of Inglourious Bastards. Number 5, Steve Frizzelli from The Italian Job. Number 4, Syndrome, your arch nemesis. Number 3, Lucius will be the first to know Malfoy. Number 2, Castor Troy. And number 1, Edward Nygma, the Riddler.
Enigma.
That is it. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
I'm really glad we finally got the Riddler on the list.
Yeah, I'm glad he's made his first appearance. He'll be back.
Absolutely. All right. Peace.
Alrighty, friends. That was our top 10 for this week, but now we'd love to hear your top 10. So please check us out on all of our available social media outlets, traditional outlets, whatever outlets we have. Check us out on Twitter at Top10KM. That's all spelled out, Top10KM. Our email, Top10KM, spelled the same way, at gmail.com, or our site, top10km.podbean.com. All forms of communication accepted, except for serial killer notes. Please don't send us any of those.
If you like the pod, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never have to miss an episode of Top 10 ever again. If you didn't like it, please tell us why. We'll try to make the show better. Our theme music was composed by Kevin MacLeod, and our artwork was created by Aaron Sant. You can check out her stuff at Sant Design on Instagram.
Alrighty, goons. We'll see you next week.